When you're on a cruise, you tend to talk about cruising with your fellow passengers, and it seems like from our very first cruise, people were raving about going through the Panama Canal. Now, to be honest, it wasn't high up on our list of places that we wanted to visit, but the more people talked about it, the more we thought that we should give it a try. Our first decision was whether we wanted to do a full or partial transit. The full transit would begin in Los Angeles and end in Fort Lauderdale. The partial transit started in Fort Lauderdale, went through the locks on the Atlantic side, then turned around and came back through the locks and ended the cruise back in Fort Lauderdale. We looked at both itineraries and then decided that the partial transit offered more ports that we'd like to visit, so that's the one that we booked. Our cruise started on March 2nd, but we decided to fly into Fort Lauderdale a day early just to give ourselves time to decompress from traveling and relax before the cruise. We stayed at the Hampton Inn. We chose that hotel because it's right across the street from a shopping mall where we could pick up any last-minute necessities like wine and soft drinks that Princess allows you to bring with you in your carry-on. The Hampton Inn is also pretty close to the cruise terminal. The shuttle ride only took a few minutes. And speaking of fast, it only took about 10 minutes for us to get checked in and through security. After that, we were on the Caribbean Princess and ready to start our 10-day vacation. One of the first things we did when we got to our cabin was to call and put our name on the list for the chef's table dining experience. A few days later, we were informed that we had been selected for this event, but more about that later. After we checked into the cabin, we started to explore the ship. One of the top priorities was to check out the casino to see what games they had. We both like to spend a little time at the machines, and I'll tell you more about that later on too. After visiting the casino, we grabbed lunch at the buffet before doing our virtual muster drill. Later, we went on deck to watch the sail away, and then spent the rest of the evening eating in the main dining room, seeing a comedian in the theater, giving the casino a spin, and watching TV before falling asleep. The next day was a sea day. We attended a couple of lectures on Jamaica and Cartagena, as well as a lecture on sharks. Yes, we did spend more time in the casino and even left with a little profit. The casino really seemed to like us during this cruise. That night was formal night, and while most men wore jackets and ties, there were a few of us who did wear tuxedos. And why do I wear a tux? Well, let's just say that I like the way my wife looks at me when I do. She looked incredible too, but then again, she always does. The show that night was heavy on opera. Now, I'm not an opera fan, but I can appreciate the talent and skill that goes into the show, so I enjoyed it. The next day, our first stop was in Falmouth, Jamaica. None of the excursions being offered really excited us, and we really didn't want to go exploring on our own, so we just hung out in the fenced-in port area and looked around. There was a band there playing Bob Marley music, of course, and there were lots of shops to peruse, as well as a vendor's market. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, the pushiness level of the vendors was about a 3. Not too bad. But we did venture outside the gates to a vendor's market just across the street, and on a scale of 1 to 10, the pushiness level there was about 23,482. Usain Bolt, the world's fastest man, is from Falmouth. And I really think the reason he's so fast is because he was trying to get away from those vendors. After about 5 minutes in that environment, we made our way back to the fenced-in port area.
Welcome to Backroads Tourist. I'm Jeff, and I'm in Falmouth, Jamaica, man.
One of the coolest things they had there was this metal sculpture that says "One Love." You can buy a padlock for a few bucks and write your name and your significant other's name on it and lock it onto the sculpture for all eternity. Men, let me give you a piece of romantic advice. Do this. Want some next level advice? Pick a padlock that matches the color your significant other is wearing. Yeah, you can thank me later. We had a sip of rum just so we could say that we drank rum in Jamaica and then headed back onto the ship. After getting back on board, it was our usual routine of eating, going to the show, and visiting the casino before heading back to the cabin. If you're a fan of cruising, I would appreciate it if you would give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel and it helps get this video recommended to others. Also, please consider subscribing to this little old channel. I post cruise videos every week, along with videos about strange, quirky, and odd places all over this country. It's fun, and I think you might like it. Just hit that subscribe button and you'll be on your way. The next day was both a sea day and my birthday. We enjoyed a lazy, relaxing day at sea before going to dinner in the Crown Grill. The Crown Grill is a specialty restaurant where I celebrated another trip around the sun with the surf and turf. I was so full that I couldn't even think about having dessert, but when our server found out that it was my birthday, he had a piece of cake sent to our cabin. How awesome is that? Cartagena Colombia was our next port. We opted for a walking tour of the old city that also included about an hour or so of free time so that you could just go around and see what you wanted. The vendor pushiness level rating here was just about as high as in Jamaica. I'd say it was about a 7 or 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. We visited the Museum of the Inquisition, and even in the museum, someone offered to be our personal guide for a price.
And these are some of the torture devices used during the Inquisition. I don't know exactly what this one did, and I'm not sure that I want to know. This, I would assume, went around somebody's neck. And then we have this device right here that kept a person's head upright, otherwise they get poked in the jaw.
Our tour bus took us back to the port, but to get back to the ship, we had to walk through Port Oasis, a wonderful, free wildlife park filled with parrots, monkeys, flamingos, peacocks, and more. We had plenty of time to stroll through the grounds and even grab a cup of coffee before heading back to the ship. It was a nice, peaceful way to end our visit to Cartagena. And there were no pushy vendors. That night, we went to the magic show in the main theater and really enjoyed it. After that, it was back to spend a little time in the casino. At the end of the night, I was up by about $1,000. We got up early the following morning to enter the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is a marvel of technology, and I have to admit, it was a little thrilling to pass through it. We also had an excursion today, and I'd been looking forward to this excursion for a long time. It was a visit to an Embara Village in Panama. The Embara are an indigenous people who still live in grass huts and villages just as their ancestors did. After a canoe trip to the village, we were treated to traditional songs and dances, as well as a snack of tilapia and plantains. They also gave us some of the sweetest pineapple I've ever tasted. Once we got back to the ship, we had dinner in the buffet before, you guessed it, seeing the show in the theater and then visiting the casino. The next day we docked in Costa Rica and we set off on an excursion that was going to become one of the highlights of our cruise. It was a visit to the sloth sanctuary of Costa Rica. The sanctuary is home to hundreds of sloths. Most of them are injured, orphaned, or otherwise unable to be returned to the wild. Those that can be rehabilitated are returned to the jungle. Although we didn't have an opportunity to hold them or touch them, it was still a great experience to be around these slow-moving creatures. They stole everybody's hearts, and I'm so glad that we decided to go on this excursion. That night we got dressed up and went to the chef's table dining experience. As I mentioned, only about a dozen people each cruise are selected for this experience, and we somehow made the cut. The head chef greeted us and guided us through a 5-course meal, complete with wine and dessert. The presentation was excellent, the food was delicious, and the company was wonderful. After dinner, we went to the theater to see a comedian, but not just any comedian. We saw Ken Boyd. Ken was brilliant. He had me laughing so hard that I was literally hurting. If Ken is scheduled on your cruise, you're in for a treat. The next day was a sea day, so we lounged around, watched a movie in our cabin, visited the casino a time or two, explored the ship, and in general just relaxed. Our next stop was Grand Cayman, where we had booked an excursion that took us to a turtle sanctuary, the town of hell, and what we thought was going to be a rum cake factory. In fact, it was just a tiny gift shop that gave you a sugar cube-sized sample of rum cake. The visit to hell was really just a visit to another tiny gift shop in the town of hell. The turtle sanctuary was the one saving grace. It was pretty nice, but we didn't get to spend as much time there as we would have liked. If we had to do it all over again, we'd skip the rum cake stop, we'd skip the visit to hell, and just go to the turtle sanctuary. Back in the port area, we had one last chance to buy souvenirs and gifts for our family back home. When we got back to the ship, we were surprised to find a bottle of wine and a plate of chocolates in our stateroom, compliments of the Casino Players Club. Evidently, they'd noticed that we've been playing on a regular basis. The show that night was called Fantastic Journey, and it was truly a spectacular show. Not only was the talent incredible, but so was the lighting, the set design, costumes. They even had drones in the show. This show definitely had the wow factor, and it was a lot of fun to watch. I wish I could show you some video of the show, but recording isn't allowed due to copyright issues, and I respect that. Our final day at sea was a great day to just sit back and reflect on the trip. The weather had been wonderful. Other than some strong winds in Jamaica, we hadn't had any weather problems at all. We'd seen some cool things, had some wonderful experiences, and met some really great people. But Princess had one more surprise for us. The Casino Players Club offered us a free cruise. We get an inside cabin, free drinks, paid gratuities, free Wi-Fi, and several other perks, as well as over $600 in gambling money. All we need to do is pay for the taxes and port fees and any other incidentals like airfare, excursions, and any other extras that we may want to add on. It was a great way to end our trip on a high note. By the way, in case you're wondering, I left the ship with about $1,000 in profit from the casino, and my wife left with about $450 more than what she started with. On the last day, we reluctantly packed our bags and set them out to be collected that night. On disembarkation day, we had a leisurely breakfast before leaving the ship and ending our cruise. I hope you enjoyed this rundown of our Panama Canal Cruise, and I hope that if you're taking this cruise, you have just as good of a time as we did. Thanks for watching. I'm Jeff, and I'll see you on the back roads or on a future cruise.